Okay, this is week 5. It's called Oily Feathers. It's from the Van Cleve's book. It's number 60. We're going to go over the scientific method to begin. Scientific method, question, research, hypothesis, experiment, analysis, conclusion. And we will want to also have our science notebooks with us because we will have the kids go ahead and label their week for this week and the top of their page, and they can write down some of their hypothesis in here. They can also draw pictures of things that they've seen maybe on movies or in books. Think about last week when we read the Lorax and some of the stuff they saw in there, because that's all going to come up this week when we talk about more pollution. So today we're going to learn why birds have oily feathers. That's why God created them with oily feathers, and whether or not giving them a bath is a good idea or a bad idea when they have pollutants on them. We're going to start by showing the kids some pictures of some healthy birds, and I'll have something like this for sure, and maybe some extra ones of them floating, and think about why, and start pointing out to them that they're floating and not sinking. And then we're going to ask some questions. But before we start that, I want to kind of set the stage for the purpose by reminding the kids what the Bible says about taking care of creation. And in Proverbs 12:10, it says, "The righteous care for the needs of their animals, but the kindest acts of the wicked are cruel." We do not want to be like the wicked. We want to be like the righteous, taking care of the earth that God created for us. So as followers of Christ, we need to be sure we're doing that. So let's set the stage for this is why we're studying this, because we want, as scientists, to be good stewards of the world that God has created. So we're going to start with questioning and purpose. Our purpose is to see how we can better care for the creation that God has made. And then some questions that we'll start asking is, what kinds of questions might you have after looking at these pictures of these healthy birds? For instance, why do they have the feathers that they do? What's on the outside of the feathers that help them float and not sink? How do birds stay afloat? These kinds of questions, and then kind of brainstorm with the kids the answers to those. What have we already learned? What kinds of feathers do birds have? How do they work? We're going to kind of dive into that and get them talking about birds. The answer to that is, just for tutors, that there is oil on the outside of their feathers, and that's what keeps them afloat. It helps them be buoyant in the water. And there's what do we still need to find out? There's going to be a lot of things that the kids are going to tell you, we need to know this, we need to know this. Of course, won't have time to answer all those questions here, but some questions we can ask are, what kinds of pollutants affect birds? Things like oil spills and that kind of stuff. When birds have been exposed to oil, people do try to clean them up with soap. And one of the questions we're going to ask is soap good for the environment and the animals, or can it itself act as a pollutant? So for the research section, we want to clarify with the kids that scientists do research before they begin any experiment to study and make sure that they're asking good questions about the subject they're studying. We can ask questions all day long, but if they're not good ones that lead us to a good conclusion, then they're really not helpful. So we want to ask really good scientific questions. So we can relate this to cycle 1 and the different things in here. I have that in your script. We're going to relate this to the oil spills that they've probably been hearing about at the Gulf of Mexico. And if time allows, there's a small video that you can show them that actually Dawn produced, and I have the name of it right here in your script. It's 2 minutes and 55 seconds. And then after that, we'll show students a feather, like an actual feather. It won't probably be green like this. We're gonna try to find some real ones from birds. And we're gonna place it in a bowl of water and see what happens. It's gonna sink just slightly, and that's okay. And then we're gonna rub a little oil. So I will bring just a little bit of olive oil for you to rub on there. And you're gonna see it'll sit right on top of the water after we put the oil on it. And then we're gonna wash it off with a little bit of soap and water, and you'll just have a little bowl there that you'll just kind of rinse it off. And you'll notice that it will kind of sink down in the water. It won't be super dramatic, but just let them see what we're kind of really talking about. So our hypothesis, we're gonna have these materials sitting in front of them. There's gonna be a bowl, water, oil, detergent, and a spoon or a little stir. We're gonna ask the kids, what do you think will happen to the oil when the soap gets in the water? Allow them to respond and talk about it. What happens to a bird's feather when oil is on them and when soap is added to that water? Will the feather or the birds be better off or worse off? So the procedure is, we're gonna pour the water into a bowl or cup, then we're gonna add oil, we're gonna observe the surface of the water and allow them to jot that down or draw a little picture in their journal. We're gonna sprinkle the powdered dishwashing soap over the surface of the water and gently stir it, but don't make bubbles. We don't want big bubbles coming out here at all. And then again, we'll observe that surface of the water and see what happens and allow them to journal if we have time. The oil will spread out in large circles on the surface of the water before the addition of the dishwashing soap, and when the soap is added, some of the oil will sink and the rest will break into tiny bubbles and cover the surface of the water. So conclusions, I have them all down here. Basically, the soap is going to change the surface tension of the oil and water and allow our feather to sink, which is bad for our birds. So we're hoping that those are the conclusions they come to after they come to this. The second part of this, that's the first part of it. The second part is called Tangled, and it's kind of piggybacking on the same thing. We're talking about pollutants. Our question is whether plastic garbage pollution is any harm to sea animals or not. So I'm going to save some of these from LaCroix bottles and bring a stuffed animal to show them. I probably won't, well, I can bring stuffed animals, but if you have like a fish or a bird, I think it would be super helpful. I found a frog, just to show them that this is what happens to animals and they can't get these off. They're so tight. So I was gonna show them this first to kind of be a visual, and then we also have some pictures of actual animals and what happens to them when plastic gets stuck on them. So we're gonna determine the effects of the plastic pollution to sea animals, and then we're going to ask some questions. We're going to ask what kinds of plastic trap sea life and what kinds of sea life often get trapped or destroyed by the plastic. So I'm sure they've seen movies or documentaries or stuff. Let them kind of brainstorm and say what they think of. And then for the research part, what have we learned already? We've already learned about reducing, using, and recycling, so allow them to see how they could help prevent that maybe. And what do we still need to find out? We need to know what practical ways we can keep plastic waste from getting to our oceans, and what are some product designs that are better for wildlife. For instance, most can companies do not put these on cans anymore because this is just so dangerous. So definitely we want to talk about that. So hypothesis, what do you think it would be like trying to remove a rubber band connecting your pinky and your thumb if it's behind your back and you can't use your other hand? So what they're going to do, the materials that they need is just a rubber band and their hand. And the procedure is each student will get a rubber band. We're going to tell the students to hook one end of the rubber band around their little finger and stretch it across the back of their hand and hook the free end to their thumb. And I actually brought some to show you just in case. So they'll kind of wrap it like this around their finger, and then wrap it around the back of their other finger like this. And it needs to be pretty snug, so we'll probably use a smaller rubber band like this. And then not using any other hands, can they get this off behind their back? Okay, so I thought animals will try to get out of these situations. They will do things like this and try to get off, but they won't be able to take it off. So tell them they can use their elbows, their noses, their knees, their feet to get it off, but it must stay behind their back and they can't use their other hand. So see how they do with that. And once they're finished, note that the students will have trouble removing their band from their own. You will have some students that will just do it, but make sure, let's set some boundaries before when we're playing rubber bands. Make sure that we talk to them about we're not going to fling these across, or no, we don't want anyone to lose an eye or anything with this rubber band experiment. They can use their face, feet, elbows to try to take the band off, pretending they're an animal or bird, but they're not going to get it off. So let's talk about how garbage that's dumped in the ocean is affecting these sea organisms. And then seals and fish don't have any hands. How could they remove plastic rings or rubber bands or anything like trash bags if it got stuck around their bodies? And then the conclusion we have here, obviously it's deadly, and we need to be careful about where we put it, and we need to brainstorm ways that we can make that better. If there's time, have them journal all about their ideas, because we won't have time to hear everybody's probably, but they can journal about their ideas that they have. And that's about it for week 5.